On the screen is a predicted lineup for Manchester City against Southampton. Now, you might have noticed that there is no striker. That's a small problem, but we'll get back to that in a bit. Firstly, I will look at the Sparta Praha lineup for Manchester City. And you might notice almost none of these players are in this starting lineup. Now, that is with an obvious intent, and I don't think I need to explain why. Manchester City is now resting players to go into a tougher fixture list later on with a few, with all due respect, tougher teams than Southampton. So the only players who are starting both games according to this predicted lineup so far are Foden, Silva and Rico Lewis. Although it's almost certain that either Gundogan or Haaland will start in this. Because, I mean, you need a striker, so either you're going to have false 9 Foden with Gundogan starting in this role, or you're going to have Foden playing his usual position with Haaland being the striker. Whichever the case, we'll talk about that a bit later, because you do at some point actually have to give Haaland some rest, believe it or not. He doesn't just... He's not a real robot, people call him the robot. He's not actually a robot, his body does crumble down. Now, Man City I'm expecting to play against a low blockade from Southampton, with probably a lone striker up front. So these things are Southampton's players, by the way, if you didn't realize that yet. So how are we going to play around that? And mainly, let's maybe talk about this before we even talk about this. Kyle Walker. In this he's playing as a centre back. So in this, the centre backs will be Walker and Diaz, with Guardiola being a left back and Rico Lewis being an inverted right back. You know, there might be a little bit of a red flag there, because there were a lot of mixed opinions for the Manchester City fans when Kyle Walker played as centre back. In my opinion, he played better as a centre back than he has as a right back in recent times. So if we are gonna play him, it's potentially going to be as a centre back for a long period throughout the season here against these weaker teams. Now, that doesn't mean we won't have a other right back option than Rico Lewis. You can always have a Kanji be your right back, and then you will simply shift into a system like this, where Kyle Walker will be centrally and you have Guardiola inverting rather than the... so you have the left back inverting rather than the right back. It's the same thing, but made differently. You could even potentially swap Walker and Diaz here, so that you can use Walker's space on that left side, Akanji who is decently fast here, and then Diaz, you don't have any concerns about pace. But moving Kyle Walker from the right all the way to the left, that could be a bit of a problem. And I don't know if he's capable of that, only Pep Guardiola knows. Because Pep Guardiola works with him, we quite frankly do not. So we can't really predict that, but that is, again, a possible system. It's not like we need Kyle Walker to play as right back in order for Rico Lewis to rotate. There are ways that you can get Rico Lewis some rest, even if Kyle Walker doesn't play at all. So, it is possible. But that's not what I predict for this game. I predict something more like this. To play around the press, or the deep block from Southampton, it really depends on if you play with a false 9 or if you play with Haaland. Because if you play with a false 9, I think Doku might be on this left hand side instead. Or maybe we're gonna have Bernardo Silva on the right, and then no Doku at all. Or maybe even Doku in midfield. We've seen that before. Not for the whole game, but we have seen that before. Not a big fan of it, to be honest. I prefer Doku to stay on this right hand side and just cross a ball in with his right foot, which he does pretty well. We might expect that to happen if we have Haaland on the pitch. If we're playing a false 9 though, we might play a bit more of a liquid system. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's say we have Foden here as the false 9, and then Gundogan coming in over here. Now there's an immediate problem here. It's an astute lack of creativity on this pitch. Like, you tell me, is Grealish a creative player? Not really. Are Gundogan or Bernardo Silva or Kovacic or Doku all two creative players? Not really. So you're not really looking at any creation in this system. the only real creator up here is Phil Foden, and he's playing as the false 9. So okay, maybe you have Gundogan as false 9, maybe that could work, but still, it's very great that you only have one creator. And I don't know how good Gundogan would be as a false 9 to begin with. But you could have some shots from distance from Foden to crack it open, maybe. It just doesn't seem like it would work very well, unless you maybe play Matheus Nunes as a false 9. But what you can do is, let's say this false 9 system, and you invert or push up Guardiola. And now you just try to create an overload on this left hand side. Now, they will probably figure out, if there is an overload on the left, we can counter. No, that's not what I want to do. They will probably figure out, because they're not stupid, if there's an overload on the left, we can counter down the left. Yes, that is true. That's why you need to make sure that there is some way to prevent a counter down this left hand side. And that's up to Pep Guardiola to figure out. But if you do create overloads on the left, they will shift bodies over to here. And you'll create space for the likes of Doku, Bernardo Silva, to get into and to maybe get a chance to shoot at goal. And if neither of that works out, you can always drop Foden a bit deeper and have him take a shot from distance. Now, we are playing against Southampton, so even if we don't play the most creative lineup, I do believe we should be able to break them down with not considerable ease, but at least somewhat easily. If we can't score, we can always bring on Haaland as a substitute. We can always bring on Akanji as a substitute if we need it defensively, if Kyle Walker is playing poorly. We can also bring on De Bruyne, because De Bruyne is back from injury. He did not play against Sparta Praha. I don't think he will come back and play 45 minutes. But what I do expect is to see him for 30 minutes in this game. Let's say we haven't had any luck scoring. We take Gundogan and Bernardo Silva off. Bernardo Silva off. De Bruyne and Foden in midfield, and then Haaland up striker. We can always do that. We can even bring on Savio. There are just so many options for Manchester City. I don't think that it's a matter of do we beat Southampton. I think it's a matter of how do we beat Southampton. I think there's just so many ways to go about it. Southampton is not a good team. I know Wolves is not a good team either, but in my fairness, to be fair to me, I did say Wolves would survive the Premier League season, and that they're only as bad as they are right now because of a poor start. I actually believe that Southampton will probably finish bottom of the Premier League. So with that said, what do you guys think first of all? Tell me down below what you guys think about the game. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. But with that said, this should be an easier game. All due respect to Southampton. Like, Man City really needs to fix up here, get an easy game over the line. Because when you're looking at future fixtures for Man City, I mean, got a bout up against Tottenham. Then we have more difficult fixtures coming up in the league than Wolves and Southampton. And then we're looking at like Bournemouth, for example. That's more difficult than Wolves and Southampton. Then we're looking at another Champions League game. To be fair, a relatively easy Champions League game. But it's still a game you have to play and that you have to get over the line. There has to be a point during this period from international break to international break where Man City rests their players and still wins comfortably. This has to be that point. Now tell me down below if you think differently, but I'll go with a prediction of, let's say, we're not going to keep a clean sheet because we're Man City and we don't keep clean sheets, but I think we win convincingly, so let's say 1 to Southampton, 3 to Manchester City. That's my score prediction. Thank you for watching to the end. Again, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Helps the channel out a ton. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.